This is Patrick Haggerty, otherwise known as Aunt Patty. This is Aunt Patty's Lavender World, where I'm interviewing a bunch of folks who influenced me or were directly involved in lavender country. And we're interviewing my dear old friend, Mark Newstetter. Mark has been my lead guitar player in the Bay Area band for a long time, 20 years.
Yeah, at least.
Mark thinks I'm his mentor, but I think he's my mentor. We're going to be talking about you today.
Uh-oh.
And the spotlight is on you, dear. And we're going to be talking about your history and especially your history with music.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll talk a little bit about you and me and Lavender Country.
Mm-hmm.
But mostly we're going to be talking about you. You've done guitar work your whole life, right?
You mean play guitar?
Yeah, you
Yeah.
never walked away from it.
I never know. From the day I picked up a guitar at the age of 9, I don't think I spent more than, 2 days away from the instrument.
That's why you're a fabulous guitar player now,
Well,
and I'm not. And you have a guitar shop right now, right? Where you
I have a
repair
guitar
guitars.
shop on Balboa Street in San Francisco. I fix guitars and I give lessons every day, but the shop's closed now because of this thing. Uh, I can't be open for business, but I can do lessons online. So that's what I'm doing.
Now, you look like you're turning into an old man, Mark. How long have you been at this?
Well, how long have I been at being an old man?
No, at being at music.
At being a musician, I played my first gig in New York City when I was 15 at a coffee house in Lower Manhattan. And I got hooked.
Okay, what year was it?
15, it was 1972. And
Oh,
there was
okay.
an underground coffee house there called the Crow and Coon.
Do you
And
remember what you played?
I actually played my own stuff and the songs I was writing back then, which I'm kind of I don't play them anymore, but that was how I got started.
Were you part of the Greenwich Village scene?
Yeah, I as soon as I basically dropped out of school and started
Oh,
hanging
you're
out in Greenwich
naughty.
Village.
You're naughty.
I
You
was, yeah.
dropped out of school?
Yeah, well, I was studying art and I kept up with art, but I fell in love with music and decided that as far as my years of study, music was really what I wanted to do, not be in art school anymore. So I quit art school and I started playing music in the street and in Greenwich Village clubs. But
Okay.
that was interesting. And then we ended up closing. I actually was running a coffee house myself with my girlfriend at the time, back in
Where
1975.
at?
On Bleecker Street. It was called the Hummingbird Cafe. Uh,
Did you meet any cool people back in the Greenwich Village scene?
I met a few cool people. I met Taylor Mead, who was one of Andy Warhol's associates. I met David Peel of David Peel and the Lower East Side. Have a marijuana. The Pope smokes dope.
Oh,
Uh,
uh-huh. I have a great story about Andy Warhol.
oh yeah.
I have speaking of which, I'm going to take a quick minute to tell it. His name was Don Paulson, and he was a socialist gay activist, 20 years older than me.
Uh-huh.
And he was a dear friend of mine, and he's gone now. He was in Greenwich Village in 1962.
Mm-hmm.
He was 19 years old, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he ran into Andy Warhol before Andy Warhol was Andy Warhol.
Right.
And he had a vision that Andy Warhol was going to be a hot shit.
Uh-huh.
So he went to the blood bank and he sold his blood for $20. And he bought an Andy Warhol original.
For $20.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
$20. Yeah.
Great.
Which he hung on to his whole life.
Yeah.
It was like his insurance policy, and someday he was going to cash it, and someday he was going to cash it.
Right.
But he loved it so much that he never did cash it in. So how long did you hang out in New York and do the village scene? I know you
Just a
moved to
few
the West
years. It was
Coast.
really about 3 years.
So when did you move to California?
Well,
That
I
was
ended
early
up
on, right?
okay. So I ended up in LA because I took peyote in New York. I was at someone's house and they just offered me some, and I was with a couple of friends, and I didn't know what it was going to do to me, you know. But he said, "Here, try this." So I ate three peyote buttons
Oh
and
my God, three.
three, and everybody said, "No, you're supposed to regurgitate, right?" You know, and I didn't, and the stuff stayed in my system for like months. I was tripping for 3 days straight. I don't think I slept, and everything suddenly it was like my head had just turned inside out. You know, everything that had ever happened to me in my life suddenly was like all there around me. Everywhere I went, I would see like echoes of things that had happened. You know, in my life, it's like your whole. They say your life passes before your eyes. Well, that was happening
Uh-huh.
to me like daily, every minute of the day for 3 days straight.
Oh
So every
my.
crack in the sidewalk like meant something, you know. And I had been lying about my age to play music in the village. And I think I let it slip that I was underage because I was playing in bars and saloons and stuff that had age restrictions. And, you know, I was able to pass for being a few years older. And so people kind of distanced themselves from me, and I was not able to really function, you know. And I scared a few people, I scared myself. So what ended up happening was I ended up getting a bus ticket to LA, barely, you know, kind of having cleansed myself of most of the effects of the peyote by then. So I knew where I was going. At least I knew what I was doing. Finally made it to LA and kind of had to put my head back together, and I started playing rock and roll, and recorded a song that got some airplay.
Was it one of your songs?
Yeah, it was a song that I wrote with the drummer about legalizing marijuana. It was called High Time to Legalize. He wrote the words and I wrote the music and I sang it.
Well, 40 years later, finally did get legalized.
Yeah, right. Yeah, amazingly.
It took a
But
while for that dream to come to fruition.
yeah, that
So
song
when did you
is
move to San Francisco?
what? Oh, okay. So San Francisco was 1981.
Oh, you've been there a really long time.
Yeah, I'm most of my adult life now.
I get it. When did you first hook up with Lavender Country?
Wow, you know, I'm terrible remembering like years, what year it was and stuff.
How did you
Yeah.
hook up with Lavender
So
Country?
I mean, I've been playing music in the city for a while, and I knew a few people who, you know, were out there gigging, and you know, we kind of shared, connections and things, and so there was a gig, I think in San Diego, and we were going to all drive down there together, and we were waiting for you to come down from Washington uh, to pick us up so we could all head down there together. You were arriving in a small school bus, and we just drove down there, and then we got to know each other on that trip for the first time.
That was our first real time together.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, we almost killed each other, I think, didn't we?
yeah, we had. I'll tell you what happened. I'm not embarrassed because it was a learning experience for me. Um, we were talking about Judaism,
Yeah,
and you ought to know because you're a Jew.
that's so I've heard. Yeah, I mean that's what they tell me. Yeah,
Right.
I was
I
bar
was,
mitzvahed and
I
everything.
was talking about the origins of Jehovah
Yeah.
and going off about Jehovah being a war god.
Hmm.
And you were taking exception to that because you thought that I was saying, and in some ways I was saying, that, this meant that Jews were warlike.
Hmm.
And of course, historically, especially through the ages. That's not true at all. You've been much more warred upon than warring. You called me out for that, um, and said that you thought it was anti Semitic. And we went around and around about that. And I said, you know what? I had a minute to think about all this. And what I said was anti Semitic. And you said, yeah, so what else? Expecting a but. And I said, no, there's no but. I'm just telling you that I see that my comment was anti-Semitic.
Hmm.
And you said Mazel Tov.
So you remember it better than me. I don't. I hardly remember that whole
Well,
thing.
I remember it clearly because I was being called out for
Yeah,
being anti-Semitic.
yeah,
So I had to
yeah.
examine them. Nobody likes to be called out for isms,
Well,
but
I mean, I think war is an illness that hits people in all different cultures for different reasons at different times. And I don't know, I've never understood why, as human beings, we can't get beyond um, war and conflict, cultural upheavals like that, which really only serve a small group of people ever.
my take on that is this. In the tribal era, wars were um, mostly focused on avenging.
Yeah,
It was a blood feud thing.
right.
When class society emerged, war changed its function.
Hmm.
And instead of being a vendetta blood feud,
Hmm.
it became a war of conquest for
Right,
power and territory. And so war exploded exponentially
right.
with class society.
Well, it became a business. It became
Yeah, yeah. So,
an industry.
yeah, it certainly did.
I mean,
Anyway, that conversation,
mm,
um, when you called me out for an anti Semitic comment,
yeah,
in my mind, the fact that we got through that conversation and when you said Mazel Tov, I went, this relationship is going to go good and I'm going to be able to get along with this guy pretty well.
I knew that as soon as I heard your songs and as soon as I, got to know you, through first through your songs really, and then just through many conversations that we've had.
Well, for a while, I took guitar lessons from you
Yeah,
for a couple, 2 or 3 years.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
For a
Because you
long
were you were playing guitar with the Out Band, and then it became called Pearl River.
So we made that album, but it never went anywhere.
Hmm.
But someday it might because it's got some really good music on it. Do you have any idea how many Lavender Country gigs you've done?
I don't. That's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, Lavender Country, the in its present incarnation, what that was like 6 years ago.
That first show in LA, yeah.
Yeah, and that was the first like new Lavender Country gig. And I was there for that. And and then I basically have done all of the ones that you've done that have happened in the Bay Area,
Plus the 5 ballet shows.
and the ballet, right, with Robert Decker's post ballet.
Uh huh.
It was an amazing experience.
I'm sure it's going to be the pinnacle of my artistic discovery.
Well, you had no experience with dance, and I actually have been kind of involved in the dance community for a long time. I actually took ballet back in the late '90s. As an adult, I decided one of my childhood dreams when I was a kid was to be a dancer, and I got to know some people in the ballet community and in the dance scene. In fact, I live with one now, Lucy Hudson, a ballet pianist. extraordinaire. As it turns out, Robert Deckers, who produced the Lavender Country show, connected with you and didn't know that you knew Lucy, who he works with, almost daily.
He said, "What, you know Lucy Hudson?"
Yeah.
And I said, "Yeah, I know Lucy Hudson. She played at my wedding."
Right.
Played at your wedding? So we
Yeah.
discovered that was
Yeah.
the connection. I
So,
have a, I have a story about the ballet that involves you
mhm,
that I'm going to paraphrase.
I'm ready.
We were doing the first ballet rehearsal,
Mhm,
and I have known you, and certainly in the course of our relationship, um, honesty, sometimes brutal honesty, has been an element in our relationship, and it's a facet of your personality that I've always appreciated. So you walked up to me
Mutual. It's mutual.
at the first rehearsal for the ballet, and you said, "Patrick, I love you." And I said, "Yeah, yeah, so what? Big deal. What's on your mind?" Because I knew something was coming after.
Mhm.
And you said, "Excuse me, but you don't have a clue what you're doing." And I said, "Yeah, I'm a little concerned about it. I know I don't have a clue what I'm doing." You said, "You've done Lavender Country all kinds of different ways and with all kinds of different formats and with all kinds of introductions and outgoes. And these people are expecting a precise measure for measure rendition of Lavender Country the way it is on the recording.
Mhm.
And you are not prepared to do that. And
Right.
I know enough about you to know that you can't do that." I said, "What should we do?" And you said, "You have to act like you're the leader of the pack and that you're directing all this, and that's part of the deal. But what's really true is when it comes to the structure of the music, I'm the fearless leader, not you."
I don't think
And
I used that term actually, but
I don't think you use that term either. It's a paraphrase,
yeah,
but it's certainly what I got out of it. And you said, "Follow me.
yeah,
Look at my eyes and look at my fingers,
right.
and I will tell you what to do
Mm,
and do it. And don't get off track. And don't forget to follow what I tell you to do."
hmm.
And it really saved the day, Mark. It
Well,
actually really saved the day because it was very true that I wasn't capable of producing Lavender Country measure for measure the way it was on the album. But
yeah,
the interesting thing was that you were
yeah.
capable of doing that.
Well, you're used to being spontaneous and improvising, and if you want to do another verse or you want to give someone else another solo, that's perfectly fine in a club setting. Um, but yeah, no, you had to stick, and it wasn't just me, of course, it was everybody in the band. I mean, Calvin and Joyce and Dennis and Mia, all excellent musicians, all of whom can play, you know, every note, every beat just, perfectly to plan. And Patrick, don't underrate yourself. I mean, I think you did fantastic in that show. You were there, you were on cue, that's what I was saying. It's like you showed what you're made of because for as much as it's your nature to be spontaneous and in the moment, and you were able to gather yourself and able to kind of draw on your what can I call it? Your kind of inner resources that you knew that what you were doing had to work. And I think your ethic and your approach to life is if you've got to do something, you're going to do it right. You're going to do it well. And even if it's difficult, even if it's challenging, you're going to live up to that challenge. And you did, Patrick. I mean, all I'm trying to say is, we did it together. That's what matters, This is the song of the Jester King. If this were all a fairy tale, how would it begin? Well, I know it must be fiction, 'cause it can't be happening. We'll set the stage in a far-off land that's not so far away, in a time so long ago that it could be today. Now in this land there was a king, well, not really king at all. You see, he was a jester who bamboozled and enthralled. Though some saw through King Jester's ploy, they could not do a thing. So many had been hypnotized by his dissembling. So the Jester King kept jesting and forgot he was a clown. And almost everyone soon forgot which way was up and which was down. Now this would all be quite silly if it weren't for the fact that Jester Kings do all the wrong things when the kingdom is attacked. Now the enemy was so tiny that the Jester King just scoffed. We can't even see these invaders, so we'll easily shrug them off. Now some wanted to believe him, since a king must be believed. But some were getting worried, since a jester must deceive. The news is fake, said the Jester King, when he heard of those who doubted. My amazing brain knows everything, and the enemy has been routed. There is no need to worry, just go on about your lives. Your genius king will protect you all. Don't believe the doubters' lies. But those minuscule invaders, they spread pain across the land, and they even harmed the Jester King's close friends, so he had to make another plan. And he went before his people, and he lied to them once more, and he blamed his critics for everything that he himself had said before. I never said this would be easy, he brazenly proclaimed. I've been horribly misquoted, you should all feel ashamed. But as that admonition passed across his lips, his own words contradicted him, as into the air they slipped. Everything he'd ever said was but a pack of lies, and now those lies surrounded him like locusts in the sky. And the words flew round and round him, and though he tried to swat them down, there were just too many, and they soon engulfed the clown. Each falsehood and each mistruth mocked and echoed everywhere, and they swallowed the Jester King alive, and then he wasn't there. And when the dust had settled, the words fell to the ground, but there was no one there to hear them, so they no longer made a sound. And all his loyal subjects had already left the scene. No one could bear to stay and watch or believe what fools they'd been. Confusion reigned throughout the land, for the Jester King left behind such chaos that it would take years for the many wounds to bind. And King Jester did not act alone, though he was now departed. In the shadows there were those who vowed to finish what he started. Now most fairy tales end happily, but sometimes not quite so. Some may end in sadness. I thought that you should know. There is no simple answer to the questions you may propound. You'll have to search your soul to find where hope may yet be found.